Well, got a little problem to fix on 817. It won't start, and I don't know what's going on, but it's clearly an electrical problem. So anyways, you see if you hit the key, the starter comes up and engages with the flywheel, and that's it. There's not enough balls to turn it. So first thing is that I took a battery charger. Now let me back up. This battery is a 2019 battery, so it's just a hair over 2 years old. And it's a car battery. It should last 5-6 years, not 2 years. I have a Schumacher battery maintainer on it all the time, so it shouldn't have any excuse for being dead. I hooked up a real trickle charger to it, had it on there all afternoon, and it says it's charged. So I'm pretty sure there's a corroded connection somewhere. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my voltmeter and see how many volts the battery actually is putting out. If it has like 10 volts or some stupid thing, then it's probably just a dead battery. I'm also going to hook up my jumper pack to the tractor and see if that makes any difference, if it will start with that on there. Assuming the answer is no, then I'm going to start to take some wires apart. And the more than likely the culprit is one of two things. Either right on the battery terminals themselves, they're just cheap auto parts store terminals with the, I don't know what you call them, but they're like a split piece where the top comes off and the wire goes in there and it bolts a little strap over the top. Those things always get corroded in there. So every couple of years this happens. So we'll take it apart and look for corrosion. And we'll also check for the ground cable where it goes to the frame to make sure that the ground is still good. Let's check it out. Now, when working on these tractors, it's kind of a pain because the hood really needs to come off in order to get to the batteries and see all the connections. So I've got the cables unhooked, but you can't really see too much. Let's check it out. I got both battery cables off, and there's no corrosion on the terminals. So next I'm going to loosen these two bolts here, pull that thing off, and let's look under there. Well, it's not really very bad in here. It's not really corroded at all. I mean, there's some corrosion, but not what I would be too concerned about. What about the wire itself? The wire isn't so bad looking. So I think we should take the hood off and dig a little deeper. All right, so we've got the hood off. I forgot to mention that it's 22 degrees out right now, and it is freezing cold in this barn. But anyways, let's check it out. All right, so see some corrosion down here, but let's check out this negative connection. Upon further look, it's very corroded inside this cable right here at the end. Can you see how green that copper wire is? Look, I mean, that sucker is green as can be. So I think that we're probably in the market for a new cable here for the negative side. And I think what I'm going to do is just actually measure how long this is and go over to the auto parts store and buy one. And I can almost guarantee that that's the problem, is that this is all corroded in there. And this positive side, I don't see any corrosion in there. As much as I hate the terminals that are on there, I think it's okay. I'm going to keep that. And like I said, I'm just going to stop right here and go buy a new negative cable. We'll stretch it out. It's probably like 18 inches. Somewhere I got a ruler in here. Let's check. Right, here's a Harbor Freight ruler. So how accurate it is, I don't know, but we're at about 15 inches to the end of the cable. So when they measure them, I'm not sure if they count the terminals as part of the measurement or if they're just talking about the wire. But we're at 15 inches and there's a little bit of a kink in it. So I'm going to say we need an 18-inch wire for the negative side. The positive side, if they have anything decent looking over there, the solenoid is right about here. So you really have a cable that goes Let me see how long this one is. Let's say I got about 10 inches. Let's just round it off to a foot up here. And this one's a little short too. I would actually like it to be longer than this is. So let's say that that's about a foot. And then to get from the solenoid over here to the dashboard is probably another foot or 10 inches or so. So you need like an 18-inch for one side and a 2-footer for the other side. So let's go over to the auto parts store and see what they got. Well, see right through the woods there is Napa, so luckily it's close by. So anyways, all right, so I got a new cable here. It's made by a company called Grote, and it's made in USA. They didn't have anything that was 18 inches, but they had this 22-inch cable. So I scored that, and it's a nice looking cable. I've used Grote stuff before, and it's a lot better than the Chinese crap that you can buy. It costs $14.29. You could probably buy a China cable at AutoZone for cheaper than that, but I like these. So let's swap it out. Take a look at the difference in quality between a China cable and a real cable. This part on the Grote is at least twice as thick as the terminal on the what I'm going to call China cable. So that's cool. It is way longer than I need, unfortunately, so there's not really a lot of room in here to coil it up or anything, but we'll figure out a way to hide the extra slack in there and we'll be good. I am going to clean this connection point down there a little bit before we put it back together. There was a little bit of rust on here, but you can see it was still shiny. I brought my Dremel tool and I got a little wire wheel. And we're just going to clean it up real quick and make it shiny, and then we'll bolt it back together. All right, I got the bolt in, and I was like, why is there another ground wire on there? I've never seen that before on any of my other tractors. It goes to the hour meter. The 817 has a factory hour meter, and it's feeding that. So now, as long as I got this other terminal apart, I'll just hit it with the Dremel for good measure before we put it back together, and we'll try to start it before we put the hood on, see if this fixed it or not. All right, so with this long cable, I just ran it up around from the front instead of coming from the back. With the hydraulic reservoir here, it doesn't really make any difference. It actually made it easier to come from the front. I should have mentioned this is a 4-gauge cable. This crimp connector on the top is super heavy duty. I feel really good about it. So now the question is, will it crank over? Let's see. Let me come over to the other side and we'll try it. I gotta hold the lever in with my knee to engage the safety switch. Let's see what happens. Still nothing. Son of a bee. For real? That stinks. Well, that really stinks. How can that be? All this is new and fresh and clean. Oh, sometimes you gotta really love these things, huh? Let me see. Let me turn the flywheel backwards and unengage the starter from it, and let's see what happens this time. Wonder if the solenoid's screwed up, or if the starter's screwed. Shoot. Let me move the stuff off my seat. Now, I just remembered that on the 817, you don't have a solenoid in the front. You got one big long wire that goes all the way around to the back, down to the starter, down here, which is where your, if you will, solenoid is built into the starter. So, the next question is the starter screwed up or not? And it looks like where this hot wire connects to the starter is pretty corroded. So could I have a problem with the solenoid portion of the starter? And just looking at it here, how does this work here? This this wire definitely comes in right here where this green wire is, and that definitely is connected right to the starter and should be hot. In fact, let me get my 12-volt tester and test it back there. Let's see here. Not much room back here to work. Where can I put this ground in a nice spot that I can just let it sit there? I don't think I can do this holding the camera, so let me do this off camera and I'll report the results back. All right, so I unhooked the battery in the front, and I just got this terminal off of the solenoid, and it is rusted. And this green wire, I don't know what the hell this wire does, but that thing is sitting in there with no terminal on it or nothing, just freaking sandwiched in there. It goes up here to this fuse, and where does it go from that fuse? I'm not really sure, but let's see if we can follow it. Goes into the, I think it's actually coming from the stator, and that's how it's backfeeding the battery to keep it charged. There's a fuse in here in between, but I think it's literally backfeeding the battery from the stator through this fuse. So anyways, let's clean these up with the Dremel and put it back together and see if that makes any difference at all. My next step, and I don't know if I can get my battery charger cable in here directly to the starter, is just to hook it onto the starter and turn the switch on my battery jumper booster box and see if the thing turns over. At least that will tell me the starter is good without too much trouble. So, I don't know. We'll see. All right, so I got the wire reconnected. I don't know. Let me put my knee up here. We'll hit the key. We'll see what happens. Oh, dude. Woo-hoo. Yeah, now we're talking. I wonder if this battery even charges. I don't even know, but it just fired right up instantly. Let me open the door so I don't choke myself out. It's definitely not charging, but I think I already knew that, to be honest with you. That's the least of my problems. Given that all it does is plow the driveway and all it does is take half hour at max, there's plenty of power in the battery to make the coil last for a half hour. So when I put it back on my Schumacher, when I'm done, it just charges it back up and we're good. So I can survive the winter with it not working right. The real question is, why isn't it charging? Is it a bad stator? Is it just that crappy wire I was showing you could be the problem? There's a lot of things that could be the problem with why it's not charging. There's a fuse. Let's check it out. These Onans have really weird charging systems, and I shouldn't say it's weird, but I mean, the first thing to do would be to pull this fuse out and see if that thing's blown. But of course I just had to start it up, and oh, the muffler is actually good for warming up your hands. Oh, that feels good. That feels real good. All right, here's the Schumacher's plugged back in. I don't like to put it next to the gas tank. I just don't like to, so I usually put it down here on the running board. But when it's yellow like it is right now, that means that it's charging. So you know, it definitely is charging the battery. And, you know, maybe if we're ever going to do anything else with this thing, like, I would love to put a mower deck on it and actually mow grass with it someday. Maybe we'll fix the charging system this summer, but for now, we'll just leave our Schumacher on there and we'll be all good if it ever snows again. Well, somebody's probably thinking like, hey, he replaced that ground cable for nothing. Well, I'm not going to say it's for nothing. It probably still would have worked fine, but I noticed that it was broken, or not broken, but it was compromised. It was all green. It was all corroded. So even if it still worked, it doesn't have a lot of life left in it. So for 14 bucks, it might as well change it, and we'll have peace of mind that all our wires are good. And anyways, nothing wrong with that. All right, well, that's a wrap on that project. I'm glad that it's fixed. Back here in the warm car, the battery in my phone was down to 6% from being out in the cold. So it definitely doesn't like that, but stay tuned for more. Comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks.